Hello guys, welcome back to the show. So I've been inspired by DevEd's video where he made a Python app to track Amazon prices. So I thought, okay, why not also make an app that tracks prices of things that I want to buy but I cannot afford right now. I would also like to buy a Lamborghini one day, but my pocket is telling me otherwise. So I decided to build a Python app that will track the prices of Lamborghini so that if any of the prices fall under £1,000 or equal to £1,000, I get a notification sent to my email that Lamborghini prices have gone down to £1,000 or are equivalent to £1,000 so that I can buy myself one. So basically, we're gonna build an application that will track the prices of Lamborghini, and then it will send me a notification if Lamborghini prices go under £1,000 or prices are equivalent to £1,000. So let's get into it. On my desktop, I've created a price directory. So I'll go ahead and create a virtual environment and install all the dependencies that I need. So that is done. One thing I also need is the request module in Python. So I'll go ahead and install this. If you want to install that, you can install this by pip install request, and I think that should be fine. You can install this. So I'm going to install request right now. So pip install request. My bad, I need to activate my virtual env. So by the way, if you don't know how to use virtual env, you can check out that video. It should be there and find out how to use virtual env. It's activated my virtual env. Now I need to install request. So I can do pip install request. I've installed request now, and I think I should install python.env just so I have all the dependencies that I need to do this application, to build this application. So pip install. So basically what .env does is that it helps you store your environment config so that you don't hard code it inside of your application. You can retrieve it from your environment and use it within your application. Okay, now I have everything that I need to get this thing done. Oh, I forgot the main thing. I need BeautifulSoup. So what we're going to do is to use BeautifulSoup to scrape this website, get all the prices, and then find out when the price is around £1,000 or less than £1,000. And if so, we get an email sent to us. So that is what we're going to do. So we need BeautifulSoup to do that. Okay, you can install BeautifulSoup by using pip. So you can copy pip install BeautifulSoup, and that should be fine. Okay. All right, so we do have everything we need now to get started. What I'm going to do is create a script.py. So I'll do touch script.py, and inside of my script.py, that is where I will join all the different components together to retrieve everything that I want from the site. Okay, and I will create a scraper.py as well, which will contain my scraper class. And we would like to send an email later to ourselves. So I need to create a class that will handle that. So I will create an email.py as well. Okay, so how do we start? What do we actually want to do? That is the $1 million question. We would like to get the scraper to scrape the website and send us an email when the cars are less than £1,000 or equivalent to £1,000. So we will need BeautifulSoup. Okay, so we can say that from BS4 import BeautifulSoup. Now that we have BeautifulSoup, what we can do is to import request as well. I'll create a class called scraper, pass it the objects. You should know that in Python 3, you don't need to pass it the objects, but I like to pass it explicitly. You can pass it, you can decide not to pass it, and there's no problem with that. So when we create an instance of the scraper, what do we want to have? For now, let's pass it. Let's give it the ability to scrape websites. So I'll use dependency injection to inject the this BeautifulSoup class into the scraper method, just so that later on, if I want to test the application, I can use a fake or a mock in place of BeautifulSoup. And I don't want to have the classes coupled with each other, else testing will be difficult to do. So let's follow the right principles as we're learning. I'll create the done.init, which will take self. And for now, it will take BeautifulSoup. Let's call it soup. will be a beautiful soup instance. Okay, then we can say that self.soup, self.soup will be soup. Okay, what we can do now is to create a get method that we can pass it the URL that we would like to get, and it will give us the content of that URL. So let's say define get self and the URL. When we pass the URL, we want to make a get request to the site. So we can use request over here. So request, we can use the request models.get, and we can pass it the URL that we want to. So when we get that request back from the URL, we need to check if the request has been successful. Actually, let's wrap this in a try because we need to calculate for errors. So try, make the request to this URL. If the request, the status code is 200, what we want to do is to get the content, which will be self.soup. I'll pass it the request.content. Then I'll pass it feature, which is HTML dot parser, which passes it to HTML. For now, let's just display this into our terminal. So I'll say print content, and let's have an except. If something goes wrong, what we want to do is to print, oops, something went wrong. Guys, it's not advisable to have print statements in your code. You can use login. So I could say import login, and I could say something like login.debug. Oops, something went wrong. So let's go into our script.py module. Let's create an instance of the scraper. Let's pass it the URL, and let's see if this method works. Okay, something went wrong. So from scraper, import scraper. Now, I don't want to hard code any of the actual values inside of my application. So what I can do is I can create, we've already installed .env using pip. So we can create a .env file. And inside of .env, we can post in the URL that we want, and this is the URL that I'm using, is the URL for this site, for the Lambo site, with all the cars that we want. Remember, what we want to do is to retrieve all the prices that we can see on this site, and then if any of the prices is equivalent to £1,000 or less than £1,000, we send an email to ourselves saying that, telling us that Lamborghini prices have gone down, so we can buy a Lamborghini for ourselves. Okay, we can treat ourselves. So let's keep this in mind. So I come back over here, I create from scraper, import scraper. I've created a .env file with the environment variable that I want. What I can do now is to retrieve that environment variable inside of my script. And how will I do that? Well, the python.env provides us a way to load the env, to load it into our file. So I can say that from .env import load env, okay? Then I can call this load env method over here. So when I call this method, I load the env into my script, and now I can create an instance of the scraper class. So let's say Lambo scraper will be create an instance of that. And what I can say now is that Lambo scraper.get, let's create a URL will be, let's use the OS module. So import OS. If you don't know what the OS module does, is the operating system module. We can use that to, it has a lot of functionalities. We can use that to retrieve environment variables and stuff. So I can say os.getEnv, and what env would I like to retrieve? The env that I would like to retrieve is this env. So I can copy this and pass the env to this one. Okay. Then I can pass the URL to the Lambo.scraper method. So now if I run the script, let's make this shebang so that we don't have to always say Python script.py. We don't want to be saying Python script.py. What we want to say is script.py and then Python will just run. Okay. So how we can make this shebang is that we can say that pound sign USR is the user bin env and it's Python. Okay. But if I do this, it's not going to work because I don't have the right permission. So I can say chmod plus X, which is to execute. I'll give it the permission to execute. So now if I do script.py, we have everything coming back. It looks a bit, everything seems to be together, but we can prettify this. We can prettify this by doing content.prettify because Beautiful Soup gives us a prettify method which makes it looks a bit, oops, something went wrong. Oh, prettify. Okay, as you can see, oh, that's a lot of content, but we are getting there. As you can see over here, we get a lot of data in the terminal. We got car finance calculator, we got car insurance. There's a lot going on here, but what we're looking for is the price. That is our aim. We want to be able to get the price from the website and then be able to tell if the price is less than £1,000 or equivalent to £1,000, then we can get ourselves a Lamborghini. Looking over here, bam, I can see the H2 tag has got the price in there. So one thing to check is that do all the H2 tags, do they have the same class and do they have the same class attributes? So we can take note of this class, ATC type is senior, and then look for other classes like that, and hopefully they do all have the same class. Okay, Lamborghini Ventador. Okay, that is it. So that is also in a H2 tag and it has an ATC type in senior. So it looks like everything is looking good, and these are the prices. If I go back to the Lamborghini website, as you can see, these are the prices that we saw. That is the £234,950 Lamborghini, and these are the prices that we saw in terminal. So we are getting there. So we definitely getting the right thing. So what we now need to do is to be able to retrieve this using the data that we have. You can use inspect, click on this, and find out the tag. So that is what we want. And the tags that we want are, as you can see, we want the H2 tag, ATC type in senior. So that is what we're trying to get. Let's go back to the code. So in here, what I can do is to go back to the, yeah, so I mean, already in the scraper.py file, we want to create another method called getPrices method that will get the tags that we need and return that tags to us, okay? So what we can do now is that we can say that define get prices. We'll take self. What we would like this price to do is to take in the URL, so the URL of the site, then we can pass it the tag, which is the H2 tag that we want. And I think the next thing we can pass it is the class, is the attribute of the tag. So we can do get prices, we will pass it the URL of the website, because what we're going to do is that we are going to call this get method inside of the get prices method. So we just want to separate our method so that each method does one thing. So we pass it the URL, we pass it the tag, which initially is none. Then we can pass it the class, let's call it CSS class, which will be none. Let's wrap this method inside of a try catch method. So again, try. And what this method will do is that it will get the nodes. So our core nodes are the tags that I want, right? So nodes will be self.get. Self.get is this method over here. So I need to pass it the URL, but I need to do one more thing. I need to find the tags that I want. So self.get, I've passed the URL. Beautiful Soup has got a method called find all, which will find every tag that I want, and I can pass it the attributes that I want. So I can specifically tell Beautiful Soup to go on the website. What I want is the H2 tag with the CSS attribute that we saw on the tag. So where is the tag? Okay, so we can tell it to go for the H2 tag and get the with the class ATC type insignia. Okay, what we can say is that go over there, find all, and what we want you to find is the tag, and with the class is written like this for Beautiful Soup because Python has got a class. So in order to avoid the conflicts, we've got to add the underscore. That is how Beautiful Soup specifies class. And we can pass it a CSS class. Okay. So right now, what we can say is that it will find it, it will do everything that it needs to get. And then if anything goes wrong, except let's say print for now. I'll say sorry, there was an error. Let's ensure that the URL, the tag, and the CSS class are correct. Okay, so that is what we are going to do. For now, let's print notes. And we need the return of this value. So we need to change this now to return content. We need to return content and we need the notes from here. Okay, now let's go back to the script. And instead of saying get, what we can say, we like dot get prices. We need to pass the URL. We need to pass it the tag that we want. We saw it was a h2 tag. And then the class, let's go back to the web and find out what the class is. So the class was ATC type insignia. So we can copy this ATC type insignia. Let's run the script. So we have everything that we want in an array. Let me print out this. Let me call this prices. And let me do for price, not prints, for price in prices. Let's print price. So, oh, my bad. So the function has got no return value because I'm printing that out. So what we can do is that, let me return this for now so that we can see what is being returned in a very nice manner. Okay, so as you can see, we have a string right here. Then we have all these tags and we have another string over here. But that's not what we want, okay? What we would like to do is to get rid of these two strings and have just that for now, okay? Instead of returning the notes, right? We're going to loop through the nodes. So for prices in nodes, which will loop through all the arrays and all the elements inside of the array, and then we can get each element, right? Each element will be the price. So each element will be this price thing over here. So from this HTML, right? We don't need this. We don't need all of this. What we want to do is to strip, just get the the amount from the HTML tag. Okay, so what we're going to do is to strip that. And how we do that is to say that for price in prices dot stripped underscore strings. Let me print price for now so that we can just see what is going on. Okay, so let me get rid of the return statement because that is not going to work. Let me run this method. So what we've done basically is that we've gone through the array, we called each element prices, and for each element we took out the HTML tag and all the attributes that it had, and we stripped, we stripped whatever we wanted, the actual content between those tags. So we now have all the prices, but this is not really useful because we still have like these two strings over here, which is not really useful. What we would like is to get rid of these two strings at the beginning and the one at the end. We need to get rid of them so that in the end we will have just these ones. Okay, what I'm going to do is to get rid of these ones, and also these are strings. We don't also need, we don't also need the pounds over here, because if it's a string, it will be hard to tell, to do like mathematical equations on them to find out if they are greater than £1,000 or if they're less than £1,000. We cannot work with them. Okay, so we need to remove all these comments away from there and make them like, make them integers basically. I'll create an array called list of prices, which will be an empty array. And in this empty array, what I'm going to do next is that I'll loop through these and I'll say list of prices dot append. And what would I like to append to this list of prices? Well, I want you to get these prices and I would like you to get rid of the first element over here. So I'll pass it 1 and I'll say just get rid of the first element for each of them and give me the rest. Okay, and the rest that you give me, what I would like to do is that I would like to replace all these comments with nothing. Let me show you what gets returned. So for now, let me print list of prices right here. So if I run this again, as you can see, I do not have the pound sign anymore, right? So wow, what I need to do is to get rid of all these comments. So I can say that dot replace, I replace all the comments with an empty string. Okay, now I have exactly what I want. So I can now get rid of these strings because I do not really need them. These ones out here. Um, if I do a for loop again, so for elements in list of prices, print elements. Let's see what gets. Okay, so we still have all these strings, right? I can use the same method to get rid of them because I don't really need them. I just want the numbers, okay? These strings that I'll convert later to numbers, and then I can use them to check if they are greater or if they are less than £1,000. So what I can do now is to return list of prices. I want you to get rid of the first element, and I want to get rid of the last element as well. Okay, so if I go back to the scripts and I give this, I call this a variable. I store the return value of this in a variable called prices. Okay, I know if prices is going to return a loop a list of prices, so I can say that for price in prices, print price, and voila, I have all the prices that I need, and they are too way damn big. I don't know how I'm gonna afford this, but I'm hoping that one day Lamborghini prices will go to or under below £1,000 so that I can afford it. I don't know if that's possible, but you need to always hope. So what I can do now is to create a method called can afford Lambo right here. And this method will be the method that will check that the Lambo price are less than £1,000. And if they are, it will send me a message. Fine, can afford Lambo. Now this method will take a self, will take a URL, which initially is none. We'll take a tag, which is none. Then you take a CSS class, which is none. So this will be the method, the main method, and all of these will be like the sub methods that work together to call this main method. Okay, let's call this price drop. It sounds much better, price drop, because it checks that the prices have dropped. What we need this price method to do is to filter whatever gets returned by the get prices method, and then see if any of them is within our budget. Now is a good opportunity to set our budget. Again, I don't want to hard code the budget in here and say that self.budget is equal to, I don't know, budget is equal to like 1,000 or something over here. Okay, I don't want to do that because then testing becomes difficult. I would like to pass it the values that I want. I want to be able to inject like different values into it. So I can say that budget initially is 1,000, and I can say that self.budget is budget. And what I can do now is that I'll create a method that will filter the prices. So I'll say I'll use the filter inbuilt Python filter method. Okay, this method takes in a function. It takes in a function. So let's say function, and it takes in a list. Yeah. So what I can say now is to create the function that I can pass to this filter method. Then I can pass it the return list from this here. I can pass this list over here. Okay. So what I can do now is to create the method. So call it filter prices. We create a lambda that will take in x, and then we'll return x less than sell dot budget. So what is going on here? This function, right, will be the function that will pass over here. So this filter price will be the method that we will pass over here. This method will take in an input, which will be the elements inside of the list. So the first element will be this number over here, which is 234,950. It will take that and it will say, okay, is it less than the budget? If it's less than the budget, then it will return true. If it's not, it will return false. But as you can see right here, we have the budget. We've set the budget right on top over here, so we can use that method. So I'll go ahead and do something like I'll create a method called lucky day because the day that Lambo prices go under £1,000 will be my lucky day. So don't judge me. I don't care if you judge me. So lucky day, wrap this in a list. So filter, we pass it the filter price method. And what we can say is that, okay, the filter price method and the list. So self dot get prices method, we can pass it the URL, the tag, and the CSS class. But now there is something going on. If I do print lucky day, I will get an error. What we can now say is Lambo dot price drop. We have passed the URL, the HTML tag, and the class that we want. But the Lambo scraper now, if we run it now, it will still work. Or we can pass it a budget if we want. So let me run this method and I get an error. Oh, okay. So I have this outside of my, okay. So I'll still get an error. Less than not supported between instances of strings and int. Because like I said, the value that we get in from this is an int. So what I think I can do is to convert the int to to convert the string to a float and then wrap the float in an int. And that is exactly what I'm gonna do. I can wrap the x in the float and then wrap the float in an int. Okay. Now when I run the method, it's empty because my budget is £1,000. Now let's increase the budget to £100,000 and voila, we do have two elements in there which are less than £100,000. So right now what we can say is that if we have prices that are less than £100,000 or £1,000 in my case, send us a message, okay? If length lucky day greater less than 1 for now, okay, print. If I run the method and I get an empty list, I get this message saying, no Lambo mate, you need to get your finances up because right now you're too broke to buy a Lambo. Else it is your lucky day, bruv. You can finally buy a Lambo. So the Lambo prices are lucky day, which will be an array of prices. Okay? Okay. So if I run this method again, what I get is no mate, you need to get your finances up because right now you're too broke to buy a Lambo. But if I increase this to that to 100,000, I get it is your lucky day, bruv. You can finally buy a Lambo. Lambo prices are gives me the list of the Lambo prices. And what I want to do here is that I want to send myself an email at this point. So I need to think about how to send myself an email. So let's go and create an email class, and we can bind everything together to send ourselves an email. So let me get rid of this. I do not have the email script, so let's call it email client.py. Now for this email client, we are lucky that Python provides us with some modules that we can use to send ourselves an email. And one of these modules is the smtplib. So what I can do is to import smtplib or do from smtplib import smtp because that is the class that we need. I can create a class. The class that I will create is called email provider. So I can create a class. I'll call it email provider, taking an object. And what I want this method to have when I create an instance of the method is that I want it to have an email address. I want to have a password, and I want it to have an address to send the email to. Okay, so I'll create the done.init method. Pass itself. Email address will be no, it's compulsory. You need to pass out an email address because if you don't have an email address, there's no way you can send an email. You need to pass it a password. You need to pass it an address to send address to pass the email to, and say self.email address or self.email, let me call it. It's the email address. So now that we have this, I can go ahead and create the method. So we will have to provide this email address, password, and everything, right? We have our .env over here. So you can go ahead and say, um, create an email address. So email, this will be your email address. I'll go ahead and put mine in there. but I'm just letting you know what you need to put there. This will be your email address. Okay, password will be your password to send email to. We will be using the Google Password app and the Google two-way authenticator to send ourselves the email. So let's find out what this is. So we come here and type in Google two-way authentication. And what you need to do is to come here and then enable this. Basically, you need to click on get started and then sign in with your Google account, and then you can do all that. All right. I've already done that. Then we will come back here and then type in Google password app. So app password sign in Google account. So you click here. For this tutorial, I've went ahead to create this email address that I'm using for this tutorial so I can sign in. When you get here, right, you get this password generator, but you can generate one. If you want email, you can say poster, which is email. Um, then you can choose, what you're using. I'm using a Mac. You need to click on this. It provides you with the password, okay? So I can use this password. So what I'm going to do is to copy this and use this password. It will allow the application to send you an email. Okay, so I'm gonna use this password. So I'll come over here and then paste this in here as my password. Then for the email, I'll use the email that I created for this demo. So now that is done, I can now come back to I don't need the EMV anymore, so I can close this. I can come to the email provider class and then create the functionality to basically send myself the email. Okay, so I'll create the define send, put password here. As you saw inside of the scraper, I would like to, pass this lucky day prize, the list of prize to myself in the email. You can find out more about the SMTP from the Python module, but basically it helps you to send emails in Python. You can find out by going to the Python documentation. So Python SMTP. Everything that you need to know is in this documentation. You can just read and then find out, but I'll do my best to explain what what goes on and basically what we're doing. So the first thing that we need to do is to connect to the Gmail server. I'll create a variable called connection, which is SMTP, and the Gmail server is smtp.gmail.com. Okay? So I'll put in the host, which is a string, and I'll pass it a port. Okay, so the host is smtp.gmail.com, and the Gmail port is 5, 8, and 7. Let me call this server because it sounds more, server. The next thing I need to do is to say server.hello. So yeah, it's really hard to pronounce. Server.hello method. And what this does is that it does something behind the scene. It's basically some encryption that it does. Again, you find more about this inside of the SMTP documentation. Identify yourself to an ESMTP server using EGLO. The hostname argument default to it does a bunch of stuff that we do not care about, how it's implemented. What we know is that it does some encryption stuff, okay? And that's what we care about. And the next thing that we need is this. So we need to put this, right? For security reasons. It says it's like a layer, it adds additional layer of security to the connection. So we can go back to our script. So I can come back here and then say that server.start TLS, and then server.eclo. Then I need to log in. Okay. How I will log in is basically using this email, this password, and the address to send email to. That's what I will use to log in. So I can say that server, the login method, which has been provided, login method is provided by SMTP, obviously. So I'll log in by using the email address. So self dot email, that is the first parameter, the email address, and then I'll pass it the password. So self dot password. Okay. So I've basically logged in, and I would like to create a subject for when you send an email, you need to provide it a subject. So the subject will be you can now afford a Lambo. Let's say yay. So we can say yay, you can now afford a Lambo. That will be the subject of the email that we want to send to ourselves. The body will be today is your lucky day. Check the Lamborghini website. So we need to pass it the URL to the Lamborghini website. So we can make this method taking the Lamborghini URL. So the Lambo website. So we can pass this Lambo website. We can pass this in here. Then all I need is to pass this the price that I want. What I need to do now is to send the email message. So I can create a variable called email message. The email message will have a subject, and the subject will be this subject variable that I've created. We want to get on a new line, and then we can give it the body. Now we need to send the actual email. And how we send the email is basically saying that server.send. See, there's a send mail method here. Okay, so the send mail method takes in the email address, which is your email address, the email address that you're sending from, the from, to, and the message. So this email address will be from self.email. We send an address to self.receiver, and the message that we want to send is basically the email message. So email message. That is the message that we would like to send. I would like to print email has been sent. And I need to quit the connection. So server.quit. Basically close the connection once the email has been sent. So now we have this class over here. We need to integrate this class to the scraper class so that they can work together. So how do we connect this to the scraper class? Again, we don't want to hard code this in here and say that self.email is equal to something. Okay, for the purpose of testing, we need to put in place, or we need to keep practicing, the best practices or the good practices. So what we can now say is that the email client will be from email client import. What we want to import is email. We want to import this class. Okay. Okay. So let's call this from email because it sounds better. From email. So self.email, because we have email here. The self.email will be email. Now we have the email. All we now need to do is to call this method right here and say that self.email and provide it with the parameters that it needs. So the email method, it needs a price and then the Lamborghini website, the URL for the Lamborghini website. So the price will be the lucky day, the list, and the URL will be this URL. I think everything is ready. Okay, now let's test this method. Let's test everything. Let's bring everything together inside of our script.py file and let's see if everything works correctly. Let's create the let's import the email client to this place as well, to this module. So from email client import, we need to import this class. We can create an instance of this email client. Will be email provider. Does it need anything? Okay, so the email provider, as we saw, when you create an instance of the email provider, you need to pass it the email address, you need to pass it the password, and you need to pass it the email address that the person that you want to send the email to. So what we can say is that we have the URL over here. So we've got email os.getenv. That will be the person that I would like to send the email to. Password, the recipient email address. So I can then pass this, the email, the password, and then the recipient. Let me go to .tmv and get all the attributes that I need. Okay, so I've gone ahead and put everything in here. So I've put in the email, I've put in the password, I've put the receiver. Okay, now what is left is that I need to pass this instance, the email client. I need to pass this to the scraper. So let me put the scraper over here, and I need to pass the email client to the scraper. So what I can say is that let's go back to the scraper. It's called email. Can go back to the script. Can say that the email will be the email client. Now, when I run this method, email provider is not colorable. Let me comment this one out. Let me see if that is the problem. Okay, so it's self.email. It's what so self.email. It's called send email. Well, I called it. Okay, so let's go back to the scraper and let's change this to self.email dot the send email, and now we pass it £1,000, so £100,000. So now if you run this, it should work. Okay, so we're getting a problem with the emojis that I added. Let's get rid of the emojis for now because they're not important. That's not the scope of this tutorial. Let's run it again. Yes! Email has been sent. Email has been sent. So we can go to the email, to my email, and let's check if this email has been sent. Okay? As you can see over here, the email has been sent. Today's your lucky day. Check the Lamborghini website, and that is the website. So we can open this URL, and it takes us to this website, this Lamborghini website. And what it says is that because there's a Lamborghini available for this price, and if you go down to the site, okay, there's a Lamborghini available for this price, which is £4,000 and £86,500. So that is basically it. That is how you can create a Python script to check Lamborghini prices. If you are broke and you are dreaming to buy a Lamborghini one day, you can do this. And hopefully, if Lamborghini prices fall under £1,000, you will be able to afford it. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. Give it a like and a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and see you next time.